Hey y'all, this video might be a little long, but I need you to stick with me because it has to do with domestic terrorism, which on September 25th, the White House posted something to its website talking about domestic terrorism, who will be considered a domestic terrorist. And I wanted to just read some of my textbook because it pretty much aligns with that, just from a different period of time. And this period of time is the antebellum press from 1820 to 1861, where the South is opposing any kind of like anti-slavery talk. They really don't like abolitionists, and they don't like people having conversations about pro-union things while the South is trying to succeed from the Union. And doing so made you a domestic terrorist, and there were consequences and repercussions that happened because of that. And in both instances, in the antebellum press era and in today, it is really just about how anyone that goes against or speaks out or has a different opinion from what white nationalists uphold is a domestic terrorist. So there's that. Two incidents that contributed to the intolerance were the Nat Turner Rebellion of 1831, in which 57 whites were killed in Virginia, and the 1830 publication of Walker's Appeal by abolitionist David Walker, whose pamphlet was the first militant assault on slavery and racism. In both instances, blacks were encouraged to use all means, including violence, to secure their freedom. To further frustrate efforts about open debate, two gag measures surfaced on the national level in the mid-1830s, reflecting Southern attitudes towards abolitionist activities. First, Postmaster General Amos Kendall told postmasters that it would be within their authority to remove incendiary anti-slavery literature from the mails. Second, Congress passed a law that required anti-slavery bills to be tabled without review. Individual states also began to apply measures to protect themselves from inflammatory anti-slavery material, including imposing severe restrictions on newspapers and sanctions on individuals who gave any indication of sympathy towards abolition. So we've kind of already seen that stuff take place in our media today, where people are being penalized for certain things that they're saying, whether it be them being suspended or taken off the air, that type of stuff. In 1832, William Gilmore Simms was threatened and forced to sell the Charleston City Gazette because of his pro-union sentiments, and a New York State student working in Tennessee received 20 lashes from the Committee of Vigilance for selling one abolitionist work and carrying another. By 1836, Southern states had laws against literature that had a tendency to incite insurrection, and anyone who dared to subscribe to an abolitionist paper did so at the risk of being jailed. Some Southern states even considered imposing death on captured abolitionists. And then another thing that I'll read off, just to kind of show you what the violence was kind of like. This little piece is talking about the New York Tribune, which has become a very popular newspaper at the time because it opposed slavery. The New York Tribune, was so hated in the South that a Southern news agent who made the mistake of accepting an order for 50 copies of the Tribune was seized and arraigned by a vigilance committee, determined to be an abolitionist and sentenced to hang. So that was history. Let's fast forward to present day, where on September 25th, the White House posted a presidential memorandum called Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence. And this talks about, from their perspective, the growing political violence that has been going on. And it talks about the assassination of CK, the healthcare executive that was assassinated in 2022, I believe. And then attacks on ICE. So, yeah. If you are anti-ICE, you're a domestic terrorist, according to this. Then it gets into what's being referred to as like traditional American values, which apparently is all the things that were in Project 2025 and things alike, and labeling our protest fights, concerns, that type of stuff as like fighting against anti-fascism. That is also in here. And it's being said that um, these movements portray foundational American principles, for example, support of law enforcement and border control as fascist to justify and encourage acts of violent revolution. This anti fascist lie has become the organizing rally cry used by domestic terrorists to wage a violent assault against democratic institutions, constitutional rights, and fundamental American liberties. Common threads animating this violent conduct include anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the U.S. government, extremist on migration, race, and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American values on family, religion, morality, so on and so forth. But these are the things that are being roped into and understood and put out there as domestic terrorism. So do with that as you will.